Good morning. Welcome to the Southern Bible Thumper channel. For this upload, we are starting a new book of the Bible. I want to make it a habit that at the beginning of every book, I take the time to introduce the resources that I'm using. First is the Big Booty, Big Back hard copy of the King James Version of the Bible. Secondly, BibleGateway.com. I only use this to read from. There are multiple versions available, but I don't like this resource for anything other than just reading on screen. BibleRef.com is the most powerful resource that I've used. This streamlines the Bible where every verse is translated 7 times on screen at the same time. And there are some summaries available. Well, there are a lot of summaries available. And I will explain later why it's still better to read the entire chapter by yourself before reading the summary if you want to get the most out of it. We have the Interlinear Bible, or this is from BibleHub.com. This is also filled with different translations, different types of tools that can provide more clarity. To me, this is very bulky to use every day, and I just don't use this unless I come here to BibleRef and one of these 7 translations can't give me what I need. Sometimes I can use BibleRef, sometimes I can look a term up in Merriam Webster. This is my favorite dictionary, thesaurus resource. But sometimes these 2 items together, just BibleRef and Merriam Webster, is enough for me to understand. And sometimes I do need to dig into the interlinear, which the Hebrew translation is the closest form of the Bible that we have to the original work. And so these characters are Hebrew. You have to read from right to left. The punctuation and the numbering of the verses is something to get used to, at least for me. So those are the resources. Great. Ruth chapter 1. Now it came to pass, in the days when the judges ruled, that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left, and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the woman of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelt there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her. And they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as ye have dealt with the dead and me. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will ye go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way. For I am too old to have an husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would ye tarry for them till they were grown? Would ye stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes, that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. And they lifted up their voice and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest I will go, and where thou lodgest I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. So they two went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass, when they were come to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved about them. And they said, Is this Naomi? And she said unto them, Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth and the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. Summarizing Ruth chapter 1, the first thing I'd like to do is point out this first phrase, in the days when judges ruled. The very last piece of information that we get from the last book that we read. In those days there was no king in Israel. So the thing that is interesting about that, by the time we get to chapter 17, verse 6, it says, In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Judges chapter 16, this is the last information that we get about Samson, which, because he was attracted to the wrong type of women who kept putting him in danger, he was tricked out of everything and had his eyes gouged, and he just died because of that. So he ruled Israel for 20 years. And the reason why this is important, he judged Israel 20 years, is because when we look at Judges chapter 2, verse 16, it says that God raised up judges who saved Israel out of the hands of those who plundered them. And then it says that when the Lord raised up judges, the Lord was with the judge, and he saved them from their enemies all the days of the judge. The only time that there is a king appointed was in Judges chapter 9 with Abimelech, who killed 70 of his brothers and manipulated the people of his hometown to elect him to be king. It didn't last long, because by the end of the chapter, he was begging to be killed because he was severely injured by a woman. After that, chapter 10, God appointed another judge and another judge and another judge. And then we have Jephthah, who he was the son of a harlot, but he did communicate with God. And so he was also a judge. He judged Israel for 6 years. But just by the time we get to 17, now we're saying there was no king. So maybe what this is saying is that by the time we get to chapter 13, by the time we get to chapter 17, Israel isn't even asking for leadership anymore. It's just, the thing about that is, when we look at Judges chapter 19 and 20, chapter 19 was the horrific crime scene of the woman who was assaulted by a group of men to death. And then following that, her husband cut her into pieces and sent it to everyone in Israel. So after that, then we look at Judges chapter 20. Israel assembles together to figure out how to punish this crime. And they only ask God for help after the tribe of people that committed this crime starts beating Israel badly enough to where they're like, we need to reach out to God for help. So they certainly have the skill. They know how to reach God if they want to, but they're just not reaching out to him for anything. So when I read this, it just made me wonder, is this occurring before Samson died, when there were still judges being appointed? Because after that, then the Bible changes from judges being appointed to saying there were no more kings appointed. So, Ruth chapter 1. Naomi, her husband, and her 2 sons left Bethlehem to live in Moab, since Bethlehem was experiencing a severe famine, In Moab, her husband dies. Her two sons marry Moabite women, and then their sons die. Naomi tells her daughters-in-law to return to their families, that they have been blessings to her family. Orpah returns home, but Ruth stays with Naomi. Together, they travel to Bethlehem. One last thing. Chapter 1, verse 20. When Naomi returned to her hometown and people were asking about her, she tells them, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Lord hath dealt bitterly with me." I remember that being in the same sentence with Moses, and when I looked it up, Exodus chapter 15, verse 22, this is detailing an incident where Moses led Israel out of Egypt through the Red Sea, and they did not find water for 3 days. So when they found some water, it was bitter, and then they called it Mara. So this word Mara is being used by Naomi to reference or to describe unpleasant, bitter circumstances. So this is some highlights. The first illustration of a mother-in-law relationship is loving these two women. This is a story that evidences that the Bible is not written to hate women. This is just showing what people do. This is an example of how older women and younger women should interact without judgment or expectations. Naomi was realistic. She wasn't arrogant or demanding. She told her two daughters, "It would be better for you to go back to your home. You're not obligated to me. You've been wonderful women." Lastly, Ruth is a non-Israelite. We see in Exodus 34 and Deuteronomy 7 the recommendation to not marry with these people. But this connection with Ruth is genuine and loving. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. I love you. Have a wonderful day.